Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining. Welcome to another episode of the PowerUp Series. And in today's discussion, we will dive into how and why you should implement graph-based rules. My name is Alex. I'm the head of fraud risk here at Unit21. I'm a fraud prevention practitioner for the past 15 years, held several positions in fraud operations, analytics, consulting, and building and developing fraud strategies. My co-host today is a good friend and our consumer solution engineer who can write AML and fraud typologies in his sleep, although he prefers to do that while he awake and get paid for it. My good friend, Matt Garish. Matt, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, nice to meet everyone virtually today. As Alex said, my name is Matt Garish. I'm a solutions engineer over here at Unit21, and I work with some of our larger customers to mostly just build rules. So rules all day, every day. So I'll be doing the demo part a little bit later on, and hopefully you get some good ideas on how you can leverage this in your own environment after that.
Amazing, Matt. Thank you so much for that. So before we kick things off, a few housekeeping items. Number one, we will be recording this session and we'll email it to you in the next 24 hours. So everybody's on the call will get a recorded copy of everything we will discuss today. The second thing is we want to have a live Q&A right after Matt will finish his demo. So we will save a few minutes for this session for live Q&A. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you want to submit any questions for me or for Matt, and we will do our best to answer those. I do see we have a quite good mix of customers and prospects on the call today. So for those of you who are not familiar with Unit21, we are a risk and compliance infrastructure. And our mission is to stop bad actors and to deliver justice and safety to the world. And here are some logos of customers who are actively working with us just on that mission. And you might ask yourself, well, Alex, amazing, how do you do that? Essentially, we provide an infrastructure to detect, prevent, investigate, and report bad actors throughout the customer lifecycle. We offer many different tools and analytics to help organizations fight fraud, anti-money laundering, and other illicit activities. And we also launched the Fraud DAO, which is a consortium with now over 45 financial institutions who are participating in the consortium with over 36 million unique identities here from the US. Some numbers of what we saw across our global customer presence in 2023. So overall, our customers monitored 4 billion events, 2.77 trillion transactions, and we helped them to detect almost $4.5 billion of fraudulent activity. In terms of how we look at improvement with Unit21 and how our customers improve, so 5.8x more fraud detected. We see an increase of SAR filings, and also we see a huge improvement in the efficiency of how our customers working the alerts, how they working the cases, and how fast and efficient they're doing all the work related for Unit21. And I think we can jump right into it. So on the agenda today, we will cover what is data visualization, what are graph-based rules, how graph-based rules can advance your fraud detection strategy, and Matt will do a live demo of 3 examples how you can use graph-based rules today if you are already a Unit21 customer. And as I mentioned earlier, we will save a few minutes right at the end for a live Q&A. Okay, so the first topic, what is data visualization? In today's environment, financial institutions collect many different points of data on their customers. And many of those data points are relevant for the risk and compliance teams. Data visualization at the end of the day is a representation of those data points in a way that can be, a chart, a plot, an infographic, or even an animation that helps the risk and compliance teams do their job. Quite often, when I talk to leaders in this industry, I hear that one of the KPIs they're always looking for is how to improve operational efficiency. So basically, how do you take the existing team that you have today and make them more efficient? How do you help them work faster? How do you help them look at the right data when they conduct investigations? And one great way to achieve efficiency is really use data visualization, simply because our human mind perceives images and graphs much better than just a simple text or a simple table full of data. And this approach usually helps a lot in the decision-making process when we're dealing with complex data sets, especially when you are conducting a complex investigation around fraud prevention, around money laundering. Being able to represent the right data with visualization tools helps a lot to the agent that works the investigation case. So what are graph-based rules? If we look at the available tools in the industry, web diagrams, network analysis, link analysis are not new. They've been around for many years. In fact, we have network analysis capabilities as part of our entire alert view for the past 2 years. Now, while the adoption of network analysis was always high among our customers, we found that the usage of network analysis or link analysis was very reactive. So it was always used as part of the investigation of the alert. And one of the things we wanted to achieve is how we can use data visualization and help customers being proactive about it. And we found that users, especially non-technical users, people who might know the business well but doesn't know the technical aspects of how to deploy a strategy, or maybe the technical aspects of how to query a database, they quite often not very comfortable with deploying strategies that look for commonalities between different users in their databases. And this is pretty much why we decided to build this data visualization rule builder, or simply as we call it, a graph-based rules. So one example that you can use a graph-based rule could be something like, if I have 3 different users who use the same credit card on your e-commerce website, if in your perspective that is a high risk, you might want to create a monitoring for that. But if you don't have the person who knows how to write the group by query in SQL and have it running in automated fashion so the agent can see it over and over again, or you don't have the person who can go into your transaction monitoring tool and know how to write those different code lines, it can be very challenging. And this is why graph-based rules really comes handy, because you can actually visually build what you think is a high risk and deploy the rule and have it running within minutes. Another example would be if you have more than 5 users coming from the same IP address within 24 hours, and they log into your either mobile banking app or to your website. If you think this is a high risk, if you think this is something worth for the agent to see, this is something that can be very easily deployed. So now let's think about how graph-based rules can advance your fraud detection and how can they help you build a better fraud strategy. On the vendor side of things, I think our end goal is to help the agent to make a data-driven decision in an accurate fashion, and make sure that this decision is made in the shortest amount of time in order to prevent financial loss. Now, I remember personally, when I was working in fraud operations 15 years ago, we always have this silly saying that if you cannot make a decision within 60 seconds from the moment the alert was created for you, just freeze the card and reach out to the customer. And I think obviously, the type of data, the structure, and the way the data presented made us realize that if we don't know if we cannot make a decision within 60 seconds, if I don't have all this information within 60 seconds, and I cannot make a good decision whether I think this activity is fraudulent or genuine, I won't be able to make the decision after 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or 4 minutes. It's useless to keep wasting time on investigation. And that's why we always used to train our agents to make a very fast decision. And instead of taking the risk of keeping the card open and maybe have more fraudulent activity coming in, it's better practice to just freeze the card and reach out to the customer. But I think in general, if you want to operate in a very optimal way, you must understand how your ops teams make decisions. And you must understand what is the peak point where the agent can collect sufficient amount of data and make a decision that will actually be right, accurate, and data driven. And that peak point ideally will have as less friction as possible. So with the graph you see here on the screen, it's basically a question of time and value. Ideally, we want the agent to reach the peak point as fast as we can. And we use visualization tools to help them achieve exactly that. Because we feel like if they haven't made a decision here, if the decision made maybe somewhere here or down the line, the more time will pass, chances are the more fraud losses we'll see. So always try to understand within your organization what is the peak point and what is the best and optimal way to make a decision, what is the best time. Now, if you're working in a real-time environment obviously the best time to decide will be very quick. But maybe you are dealing with much more complex investigations. Maybe you're dealing with, investigation that can last 3, 4, 5 days, maybe a week. Always try to help the agents and help the team understand when is the right time to escalate, when is the right time to close the case. Those different peak points will be very different from one organization to another. And I think if you're leading either risk or compliance practices within your organization, it's important for you to understand where the peak point is for your teams, for different teams to operate in. Now, recently, what we did is we took a deep dive into the data that we see from how our customers use graph-based rules. And we try to understand what are the commonalities they're looking for, what are the best match criterias, what are actually, the definitions of a fraud ring, the way our customers look at fraud rings. And there's a very nice example that we came across that you can see on the screen right now, where we found that combination of match criterias are actually a key to success when you're looking for commonalities between different users. And what this graph that you see on your screen represents is basically, we saw that when our customers deploy graph-based rules and they look for users who will share, let's say 3 or more users who are sharing a full name and the date of birth, the combination of those two factors resulted in almost 93% of true positive alerts. So basically, 93% of the alerts where we had 3 or more users who shared those 2 different match points were actually tagged as fraudulent. Now, if we look at those match criteria separately, we've seen a completely different picture. We've seen that date of birth as a standalone predictor is obviously very weak. So less than 1% of true positive. And it kind of makes sense because many people on our platform or in your bank or your credit union, whatever that is, can share the same date of birth. If we look at full name as a match criteria and the standalone match criteria, again, the performance are not so high, only 33%. And it makes sense because people can potentially share the same full name. But when you combine the two together, it's pretty much what we call 1 + 1 = 3. Combining those 2 match criteria together actually creates an effect where it doesn't make sense that you have 3 or more users sharing the same full name and the same date of birth, and they all operating on your platform, how big or how small that platform might be. And if you think about it, most financial institutions, they have a very sophisticated onboarding flow. And usually if there's a new entity who tries to join the platform and it's already, let's say they try to use a social security that already existing, they'll probably be denied. If they try to use maybe the same device, they might be denied. If they try to use the same, I don't know, phone number, they might be denied. But if I'm trying to onboard to a platform and I share the same full name with an existing user, nobody will decline my application. Or if I share the same date of birth as an existing user on that platform, nobody will decline my application as well. So it's much easier for me to actually join and onboard this financial institution. And what we're seeing that after those entities already created and established accounts, they start to manipulate and they start to change some PII, they start to change addresses, they try to change phone numbers. We suddenly see correlations of the device that they're using, which they might be able to disguise and mask during onboarding. And all those different aspects that you weren't able to catch during your KYC, even if you have a very sophisticated waterfall approach, can actually be caught with a tool like a graph-based rules that we're offering here at Unit21. So at this point, I think you had enough hearing from me, and I will welcome Matt to share his screen and walk us through some ideas of how our customers can deploy graph-based rules today. Matt,
Perfect.
the stage is yours. I will stop sharing my screen now.
Awesome. And let me get mine up here. Wonderful. Okay. So today I'm going to take everyone through a few different scenarios where we can leverage graph-based rules. And we're going to start with 314A. For those that don't know, 314A, federal law requires financial institutions to scan customers and transactions against watch lists to identify entities that may be involved for possible money laundering or terrorist financing activities. So essentially, 314A is a list of potential customers of the FI that can be run through your database. So I'm going to actually do all this live. And there is one prereq for 314A. It's to set up a data stream that will actually ingest that list. And we can do that via flat file ingestion. This may look a little intimidating. No worries, your CSM or myself can set it up quite quickly for you if you're interested in going that route. So in detection models, I'm going to go ahead and create that new rule. I'm going to click on scenario models, which are more of your ad lib models. And this is where we're going to find our graph-based rules. So let's go ahead and get it up. Perfect. So if you're an organization that deals purely with businesses, then obviously you would need to have that set up to account for businesses. And if there is any potential, the shared list versus the list of users within your own database. However, if you're an organization that is more on the P2P side, then what we would do here is we would most likely start with first and last name, although we, of course, can add in, date of birth or address if we want to be a little bit more targeted. And then the other two steps here is I need to actually filter against the entities itself. So I need to tell, which entity should we be matching against that has a 314A status. I'm going to go ahead and do that quickly here. And then what I also now need to say is, all right, well, we know what have that 314A status based off of what we uploaded. So let's go ahead and match it against our current users within the Unit21 environment that don't have that 314A status. Perfect. And as you can see, in a matter of about 30 to 45 seconds, we have this rule built. So now we go through the normal steps from here. Let's give it a name that is readable for our downstream investigators. Give it a description as well. And then ultimately determine how often do we want this rule to execute against our entire database. The minimum time is 1 hour, but you can really set it based off of your own processes and needs. I typically set things to around 12 to 24 hours, knowing that if there is anything that's found, at least I'll be getting those alerts once a day. And then we click validate. And then a few seconds later, we now have, it looks like a match. So I'm going to click into this sample alert, and I can see that I have two entities, one that is part of that 314A list and one that is not. So the user that was already natively within my own environment. So, with that information, we can start our investigations to determine what actually is happening here. And is this someone that we need to ultimately report to the proper authorities? So the next and one of the more common scenarios that we'll see out there are fraud rings. So ultimately, you may have an individual that have several fake accounts and they're being spoofed with the ultimate intention to engage in something nefarious. So very similar to what you just saw, I'm going to go ahead and build a rule to detect just that. We'll hit create scenarios. We'll go back to our graph-based rules. And in this instance, I'm going to use, let's use address, IP address, and email address. So let's go add IP address and email. And in this instance, I want to know if it's matching with 6 or more entities. So there you go. Another 30 to 45 seconds, we have our second rule built. And we could follow through the process I just showed you, but let's go ahead and actually try to build out a third scenario. This is also something that is quite common that we see, and this is specifically as it relates to ban evasion. So most customers have healthy upfront KYC, but chances are after onboarding, there are not enough controls when existing users change PII or data after the fact. So in this instance, we're going to want to alert when new users access the platform from an IP address or a digital fingerprint associated with that banned user. So I'll go ahead and get that set up. And let's go right fingerprint, and we'll just do more than 2. And in this instance, very similar to how I set it up the first time, I want this specifically to match against individuals that I have already banned. So I would house that under our status. I'm going to select that field, press save, and now we are good to go. So let's go ahead and go down the funnel so that we can get this in validation. And hopefully everyone types better than I do or spells better. And we're off to the races. Right. And in this instance, let's go ahead and see what we actually got alerted for. And awesome. So as you can see here, we have this entity that we've already banned within our platform. And we can see that we have multiple other individuals that are sharing the same commonalities, which again, going back to it, are your client fingerprint and IP address. So this leads me to believe that, hey, there might be something nefarious going on. So we can then pass this to our investigators to get that investigation started. And yeah, those are the 3 examples that I wanted to show you today. Like I said, it's quite easy. You can run multiple different versions of graph-based rules all simultaneously, especially when you're getting started. I like to do multiple different versions just to see what's actually within my own database and what other type of trends I might be able to capture just based off of having this run in the background. But with that, I will go ahead and stop sharing and pass it back over to Alex.
Amazing, and thank you so much for this demo. I think it really illustrates how simple and straightforward the graph-based rules are. But with them being simple and straightforward, it's a powerful tool that you can really use to enhance your fraud strategy. Fraud prevention, although can be controlled with a good KYC process, doesn't end there. And always remember that when you have bad actors who are trying to onboard to your platform, eventually they will figure out what you're looking for and what controls you have on your onboarding flow and what you're looking for when you're doing the KYC. What is more challenging for them to figure out is what are you monitoring after they established an account and after they created an account, and how are you looking for how they log in and how they access the platform, what device are they using, what IP addresses are they using, are you looking for any changes in the PII that they're creating before executing any fraudulent activity. So this is a great way for you to use this tool and really make sure that even if you onboarded a bad actor, or if you have some bad entities or fraud rings operating on your platform, you're still not fully, running around with blind eyes. You actually have some visibility to what's happened. I will share my screen again. Perfect. So now we can move forward to our Q&A session. I see we have a couple of questions coming in. All right. So the first question is, should financial institutions try to visualize all or as much data as they have? That's a good question. I think it's important to create visualization where the data is complex or where the data is coming from more than one source. Always think about if it will take the agent X amount of time to process the information you present to them as a text or as a table structure. Always think about if you can visualize that structure, will that processing, mental processing time will be much faster for the agent? And if the answer is yes, then maybe you should consider visualization either within your transaction monitoring tool, or if you have any external like dashboards and visualization tools like Tableau, etc., you can use visualization there. So definitely you don't need to create everything in graphs and colors, and it's okay to have normal text, and it's okay to present normal text strings for your agents, but definitely where there's complex data sets, I think it's worth thinking about whether or not you should visualize it. Second question is, and Matt, I think you can take this. So how fast you can run a graph-based rules, and what is the recommended time threshold to run a graph-based rules in general?
Yeah, so the minimum execution for graph-based rules is 1 hour. It kind of depends, and a lot of it depends on what your preference is. I typically have them, or at least when I build them, I have them run every 24 hours. That usually is a relatively good time frame. It also helps control the flow of alerts that are ultimately generated should the graph-based rule hit on any of the activity that we just saw within the environment. But at the end of the day, it's very flexible. It's up to you. And I think based off of, if we were to go through this exercise together, I think we would run a few different versions, see what type of output we get, and then we could come up with the best determination there.
Absolutely. And I think what I can add is it also really depends on the manpower you have available that working on the platform. I mean, if you have, let's say, 5 agents and all those 5 agents work 9 to 5, there is no reason for you to run a graph-based rules every hour, because nobody will see the results at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8, 9, or 12. They will see everything at 9 a.m. in the morning when they come into office or when they log into the systems, whether they work remotely. So in terms of alert generation, if it makes sense for you to run it every 10 hours, every 12 hours, or every once a day, that's also fine, as long as you're comfortable with the visibility that it creates for the agent. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to run it every hour. And here we have another question coming in of how many users can be considered a fraud ring? That's a great one. So there is a saying, right? 1 is by chance, twice is a coincidence, and 3 is a pattern. We actually analyzed how many entities, linked entities, are showing the best true positive rates when it comes to graph-based rules. And in general, we see very low true positive rates for 2 or 3 entities. And there is the spike around 30 to 40% of true positive when it comes to 4, 5, and 6 entities, and usually 7 and above resolve in over 90% of true positive alerts. So again, probably if you have 4 entities that sharing some commonalities, it's probably a good time to start looking at them. But outside of that, I think the 7, 8, and 9s are really sign that you have something going on. And let's say we have another question here. The flexibility seems like a great feature. From the bank side, it also seemed like a potential risk. Do you recommend that banks work with data specialists, either in-house or hired, to ensure that their rules are appropriately set and validated? Uh, I mean, I hope that every bank today has at least one BI person who actually understands how the data is structured within the bank. But one thing about Unit21, and it's not only for graph-based rules, it's for any rule that you deploy, is that we have validation features. So basically, before you turn on the rule into production and have it generating live alerts, the validation phase actually shows you results that you can run either historically on the data that you already have. So for example, if you have a fraud typology in mind and you want to say, hey, let me take a look if I deploy that typology over the past 30 days, what the result will look like. And then you will have the validation results in front of you. So you can actually go and compare it with your database, compare it with your other let's call it other system where you manage all the data and related to your users. You can actually make sure and be comfortable to say, hey, I think this rule is operating exactly as I want it, or hey, maybe I need to make some tweaks, maybe I need to adjust the thresholds, maybe I need to make some small changes to make sure it's actually working better. But yeah, great question.
Just to add onto that, Alex. So as Alex mentioned, we do require you to go through some type of historical back test. What you saw earlier today, actually a few minutes ago, was me pushing those rules to validation. So that was the validation results. From that point, we can either, if we're comfortable, we can push it live, or we can actually add it to a intermediate state, which is called shadow models or shadow mode. So that will run on live data. So opposed to just running a historical backtest and saying, all right, we're good to go, let's start generating alerts, we can also have this running on live data without producing workable alerts for a period of time until we're comfortable, and ultimately then push it live.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with everything Matt just shared. And I think that this is it. I don't see any more questions coming in. So in general, I will tell you that if you're not very familiar with Unit21 and you'd like to learn more about other features and capabilities that we offer, please go and visit unit21.ai. We have a lot of great materials there. We have blog posts that talk about fraud prevention and money laundering. We have a lot of demonstrations of different products and features that we offer to our customers. So definitely a great resource of knowledge, unit21.ai. And outside of that, I would like to welcome you to scan the QR code and download the State of Fraud and AML report, which is a report that we do annually where we ask leaders in the industry on their opinions of how they see the landscape of fraud and AML happening within their organization. Always very insightful to see what other people in your position have to say about the same things, about the same issues you're dealing with. And I think that is all we have for you today. So really quick and easy workshop. I hope it was insightful for you. And I would like to thank you so much for spending the time with us. Thank you, Matt, for co-hosting this with me and showing the awesome live demo for our audience. And we will see you in the next session of our PowerUp series. So thank you so much.
Have a great day,
Until
everyone.
next time. Cheers.